Imagine being born into a world where time is no longer your greatest limitation. A world where life doesn't feel like something constantly slipping through your fingers, but something that stretches far into the distance, open and undefined. For most of human history, life has been short. We grow up quickly, rush important decisions, and live with the quiet pressure that everything meaningful must happen before it's too late. Years flip by almost unnoticed, pushing us forward whether we're ready or not. Now imagine that pressure slowly disappears. Your body stays healthy. Your mind remains sharp. Decades pass, yet aging no longer decides what you can or cannot do. And this isn't a rare exception or a privilege for a few. Everyone around you lives this long as well. Entire societies begin to age together, sharing the same extended horizon of time. When time stops being scarce, priorities begin to shift. People stop racing against the clock and start paying closer attention to how they spend their years, their energy, and their choices. Life doesn't suddenly become easier, but it becomes deeper, longer, and far more intentional than ever before. When time stops being scarce, the human brain changes first. Knowledge no longer rushes in and out just to survive the moment. Instead, it stacks, connects, and deepens slowly over decades of experience. Experience is no longer something that fades with age. It accumulates. Each decade adds new layers of understanding, perspective, and judgment. Time itself begins to feel different. Life no longer feels like a countdown racing toward an ending. Decisions slow down. People pause longer before acting because they finally can. One lifetime no longer means one identity. A single person can live many different lives within the same body. Someone might spend decades learning, then decades creating, then decades teaching, exploring, or starting over entirely. Learning no longer ends with school or early adulthood. The human mind keeps expanding, layer by layer, decade after decade. In a world like this, speed matters less than understanding. The most valuable resource is no longer youth or talent, but long-term knowledge shaped by time. With centuries ahead, the way people make decisions begins to change. Mistakes become less terrifying when you know you have time to recover from them. Failure no longer feels permanent. It becomes part of a much longer process. When people stop rushing, patience grows naturally. Choices are no longer driven by fear of running out of time. Instead, they are shaped by reflection, experience, and long-term thinking. As individuals slow down, society follows. Stability increases. Short-term thinking slowly gives way to plans that stretch across decades. Multiple generations now live side by side at the same time. Knowledge doesn't reset every 30 years. It accumulates, passing forward instead of constantly starting over. People begin thinking 50, even 100 years ahead. Urgency fades. Long-term planning becomes normal rather than exceptional. Life becomes less reactive and less chaotic. Not because problems disappear, but because people finally have the time to deal with them properly. When humans live for 200 years, work changes completely. A career is no longer something you rush through early in life. It becomes a long, evolving journey that shifts many times over decades. People no longer race toward retirement as a final goal. The idea of stopping completely begins to fade. Work stretches out, pauses, restarts, and reshapes itself again and again. But longer lives also bring more competition. Experience stays in the system longer, and progress becomes slower and more demanding. Younger generations wait longer for opportunities, while older generations remain active, skilled, and influential. At the same time, the overall pace of life begins to slow. There is less panic, less pressure to succeed immediately. With time no longer running out, people stop racing blindly. They begin choosing their direction more carefully, focusing less on speed and more on sustainability. As more people live longer, the effects reach the entire planet. Population grows steadily, not suddenly, but continuously over time. resources begin to feel tighter. Not because they vanish overnight, but because they are used for much longer periods by far more people. This creates pressure on food, energy, water, and space. The planet starts pushing back, quietly but consistently. Humanity is forced to adapt. Old systems built for short lives stop working. Planning replaces exploitation. Sustainability becomes unavoidable, not as an ideal, but as a requirement for survival. Systems reorganize. Consumption slows. Long-term balance becomes the only path forward. Living longer doesn't just change individuals. It demands a completely new relationship between humanity and the planet it depends on. As life stretches across centuries, personal relationships begin to change as well. Love is no longer shaped by urgency or fear of running out of time. It slows down, deepens, and evolves instead of burning out quickly. Relationships are no longer expected to last forever in a fixed form. Some grow, some transform, some end, and others begin again later in life. Being alone stops feeling like failure. With more time, solitude becomes a conscious choice rather than something to escape from. This long life forces people to spend more time with themselves. Self-reflection becomes unavoidable. Over decades, people learn who they are, what they value, and what actually matters to them. Meaning is no longer something chased desperately. It's built slowly, through experience, mistakes, and change. Emotional extremes begin to fade. Jealousy weakens. Impulsive reactions lose their power. With time on their side, people stop reacting to life and start understanding it. With so much time ahead, emotional balance slowly becomes a skill people actually learn. Reactions soften. Feelings don't disappear, but they become easier to understand and manage. Emotional extremes lose their grip. Jealousy fades. Anger cools faster. Fear stops controlling every decision. Over decades, people begin recognizing their own patterns. They notice what triggers them, what calms them, and what truly matters to their well-being. Relationships change alongside this growth. Connections become deeper, calmer, and more honest. There is less performance, less pressure, and far more authenticity. Fulfillment stops feeling like a distant goal at the end of life. It becomes something people return to again and again, at different stages, in different forms. Life develops a healthier rhythm. Not rushed, not stagnant, balanced. With centuries to live, people finally understand that happiness isn't a single achievement. It's a process, built slowly through awareness, emotional stability, and time. And for the first time, time is no longer the enemy. It becomes an ally. As more people live longer, responsibility begins to grow alongside time. Choices no longer disappear after a few years. Their consequences stretch across decades, sometimes even across generations. Individual actions start to matter more. What you build, what you consume, and what you ignore no longer affect just a short moment in history. They shape a future you fully expect to live through yourself. As the global population grows older and larger, the planet feels the pressure. Resources are used for longer periods of time by far more people than ever before. Food, energy, water, and space slowly become harder to balance. Not because they vanish overnight, but because demand never truly resets. This forces humanity to change direction. Short-term thinking stops working. Exploitation becomes self-destructive. Sustainability turns into a necessity rather than an ideal. Systems reorganize. Consumption slows. Long-term balance becomes the only path forward. In a world where people live for centuries, the future is no longer abstract. It is personal. And for the first time, humanity is forced to take full responsibility for it. Eventually, one question becomes impossible to ignore. If humans can live for 200 years, what is all that time actually for? A longer life doesn't automatically create meaning. It only creates space, and space can be filled with purpose or left empty. With centuries ahead, achievements lose their urgency. Status fades faster. What matters is no longer how quickly something is done, but why it's done at all. People begin measuring their lives differently, not in milestones reached, but in direction chosen. Not in speed, but in depth. Meaning stops being something people chase once. It becomes something they revisit, rebuild, and redefine many times throughout life. The future no longer feels distant or abstract. It feels close, personal, inevitable, and that changes everything. Because when you expect to live through the consequences of your choices, purpose becomes responsibility. Living longer doesn't answer life's biggest questions. It simply removes the excuse of not having enough time to face them. If the future belongs to everyone, then learning how to think about it matters at every age. Subscribe for more stories about time, humanity, and the choices that shape what comes next.